were you aware at the time, I didn't know this until Frankie told me this at all, that I guess about a year before he blew out his knee, he took a trip with Jason Lee and Gonzalez to SF, and I don't know if you were with them or not, and they offered to put him on blind, and he just said no because he wanted to stay true to Powell, they were his hometown, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I was not aware of it, but I could see how that could be a regret because, you know what I mean, like, I know that like after Stacy had left and like, you know, when me and Rudy made a decision to ride for Blind, it wasn't like the smartest thing. We were leaving like a super big company for something that was a little bit more smaller, you know what I mean? And, but we just kind of followed our hearts because like we were big fans of Mark Gonzalez and Jason, you know what I mean? It ended out like, you know, if I wouldn't have made that move, I don't know where I would have been, you know what I mean? So then I wouldn't have worked with Spike, we wouldn't have had the Blind video, and you know, who knows what would have happened. So I'm sure, yeah, he probably does regret that, you know? That's a bummer. I mean, that's super rad that he's like super loyal, you know what I mean? And he stuck by it, and like, you know, maybe the only problem is that Powell wasn't as loyal as Frankie Hill. George Powell.
Yep, the end of propaganda. I drank some tequila the night before, and I was sleeping in a little late. And Frank Hirata and Todd Hastings, Robert Catilla all were there in my house. And I woke up late, and I wasn't skating very good that day, a little hungover. Frank Hirata was killing me all day long. And at the end of the day, Todd Hastings looked at me and he said, "Man, do you want to do anything today?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll show you this ollie at my old high school. I'll go show you what it looks like." I had no intention of doing it.
You know, there was a time when Frankie Hill was doing Peter Pan, the movie. He moved down to La Mirada and he was staying with my friend like Jason Williams and Trent Gaines. And La Mirada was actually like a really like, you know, I was actually introduced to all those people through Rudy Johnson, and that was like our posse. And it was kind of a little after we had got on and stuff. And Frankie actually moved to La Mirada, was staying with like Jason Williams, and it was rad. He was like, you know, he was living in like basically LA and filming that movie, and we were like skating on the off time. And it was like super sick, you know what I mean? And we were like super happy with him because he was doing this like major movie with Robin Williams. And a couple of my friends were like the Lost Boys. I think Frankie had, I don't know if he was the Lost Boy or like he was kind of a more main character, you know what I mean? Like that was rad, man. It was like, you know, that was big back in the day. And I think there was like some like, you know, some rad clips that Frankie got like when he was like doing that movie and he was down here. That was like the La Mirada double kink was the like, I think it was like a 5 flat 5 with the kink on the bottom. And then the other one was like, you know, downtown LA, there was like this 12 stair rail. I think he like 180 mute grabbed it. And then like there's like those quick transitions in the back and he almost like falls into it. I think he even like skated that rail in that one, but like he was putting down some serious hammers on his off time of like hook, you know?
You had to have been skateboarding at that period of time and known what it is, because I hate that shit. It's like, oh yeah, back then, this and that, da da da. It's like, you know, back in the day and bullshit like that. I fucking hate that shit, but there is you gotta know, like, none of this stuff was around. You know, we had our videos that came out once a year, and that was your little Bible for that, you know, and then you had Thrasher, like, or Thrasher and Transworld, that's it. You know, there was no internet, there was no fucking cell phones, there was no, you know, this bullshit, you know, like.
Bullshit. People weren't getting this constant update.
They weren't media fucked like they are today.
I mean, I think that, you know, probably, I could probably say like, you know, in that time, like whatever, early 90s or whatever it was, you know, if you had an ACL surgery or blew out your knee, it's like, you know what I mean, that was like maybe people thought you were over. It wasn't like nowadays where you see that guys that are hurting their knees are getting them worked on by good doctors, taking rehab seriously, and getting back on board, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like that back in the day. It's like, you know what I mean? And even the average pro, like by the time you were like, you know, in your mid-20s, you were considered really old. Nowadays, you got a lot of skateboarders that are like, you know, skating in their 30s, you know? Someone like Andrew Reynolds that might be like putting out some of the best video parts of his life in his 30s. Kind of like, I don't really remember when Frankie hurt his knee, like, you know, I remember like there was probably some times maybe I didn't like just see him in the scene, you know what I mean? But I don't think he was the type that ever like used it as an excuse and like talked about it and put it out there like, oh, I'm not skating because of my knee, because of this and that. And maybe that's why I didn't know like how serious the knee surgery was, you know what I mean? But I think that I did skate with him maybe like after he had that knee surgery, and it didn't look like he slowed down too much, you know what I mean? Not enough to like, you know, maybe kick a guy off a team that had put in so much like work for a company, you know what I mean, for years. At least take him under your wing and maybe like give him a spot, like, you know, doing something over there in Santa Barbara, because the guy was like, you know, everybody loved Frankie in Santa Barbara, and like everybody loved him at Powell, you know what I mean?